All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Stacy Young, but I go by Sly. My author's name is S.L. Young. I'm an author, blogger on Huffington Post. I'm a business professor and an inspirational speaker. So today we're going to talk about transforming individual to organizational learning to maximize success. So if you're looking to just come and hang out at this session, you're not just going to hang out, you got to work a little bit. See, I'm a professor, so I want you to actively be engaged in the process. All right, so what we're going to cover today is we're going to define belief and some of its components. We're going to learn about belief and its impacts. We're going to understand the importance of active learning for individual and organizational development, which is very important. We're going to identify the benefits of collaborative learning and its impacts on organizational performance, excellence, and success. And we're also going to understand the importance of recognizing contributions by demonstrating appreciation for performance excellence. So that establishes our roadmap for this session. So what are the expectations for a participant? So what I would love to have is for you to be engaged with the discussions, because if you're engaged with the discussions, we're going to get more out of this experience together. I want you to identify some takeaways. So hopefully you'll be able to identify a couple or a few takeaways during the session. We're going to support each other's learning, because being able to leverage your team to learn is a great tool. And of course, we want to be excited to learn. So are you guys excited to learn? Woo! Come on, are you excited to learn? Yeah! I am! All right, let's go together. Okay. And we're going to have fun throughout the session. All right, so first I'm going to start just to give you a little bit of information about my background. I told you quickly about my background, but I'm a graduate of the American and the George Washington Universities. I have an undergraduate degree and 2 master's degrees. I have over 10 years of experience working in a lot of different areas, from billing to customer support to engineering to operations to finance, marketing. I believe in having a lot of experiences because that helps you to develop as an individual, but I've always dreamt of being a writer. And then last year, well actually over the last couple of years, I've written about 13 different publications, and as of last year I started writing for Huffington Post as well. Yes, sir?
When do you sleep?
When do I sleep? Never. So my crew that's here supporting me right now will tell you that I seldom sleep. A couple hours here, a couple hours there. So here's a question for you. What's active learning? Sir?
Being engaged in the learning process.
Being engaged in the learning process. Okay, is it just being engaged in the learning process?
Well, participating as well.
Participating as well, okay. So active learning encourages participants to be willing to engage in the process of learning. But most importantly, we have to be in a non-threatening environment. What does it mean to be in a non-threatening environment for learning? Sir?
Somewhere where you feel safe to say whatever you want.
Exactly, without worrying about being judged. Because if you're in an environment and you're trying to learn and you're worrying about what others are thinking about you or what you might say, how might that impact your ability to learn? It might restrict it a little bit, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions or add to the discussion. Why might that be important? Well, it's important because if you have a question, guess what? Somebody else probably has a similar question. So why should you be afraid to ask? But more importantly, if you have a question, ask. Because if you have something that you need to know, don't be afraid to ask the question. And so throughout this session, don't worry about interrupting me as we go through. If you have a question, ask me as we go along. Because I'd rather you ask me in the middle of our discussion than to collect a whole bunch of questions that we have to answer at the end. But if that's the format that you prefer, we can do that as well. We're going to practice the information taught during the session, because if we practice the information that we're learning throughout the session, it increases the probability for retention and learning. And then we're going to support each other's knowledge acquisition, because in team-based environments, when we can support each other's learning, individuals will grow, but more importantly, the team or the organization will grow as well. Does that make sense? So active learning and practice. So during this session, with everyone's assistance, we're going to be able to actively learn from each other. So, why might active learning be important? Why might it be important to actively learn from each other? Sir?
You can learn better from each other. If somebody else explains it to you in more simplified terms, you'll get a better understanding. That's just general understanding.
Right, because everybody's not going to understand things the same way. So in a lot of classroom environments, what's the primary teaching style?
Lecture.
Lecture. But lecture, and it's very what? No, it's a P word. Passive. Right? So a professor is up here. Hopefully you're keeping it clean back there. So passive lectures is the traditional approach. So there's a professor who comes in, provides a whole bunch of information, and what are the students doing during that process? Taking copious notes. So what's happening while the professor is lecturing, providing information out to you, and you're taking copious notes? What's not happening? Interaction. But what also is not happening? I'm sorry? Retention. And guess what's happening? You're where? 5 to 10 seconds behind where the professor is. So if that's happening, so if you're writing or you're taking notes on something that was said 5 to 10 seconds ago, you're not actively engaged in the process. And actually, the other thing that I'll just add real quick is, so I'm a college professor, as I mentioned earlier, and one of the things that I do is I develop all of my slides. I don't use the publisher slides. I develop everything because I want to present it in a certain way, slant it towards some of my experiences and what I know work, not just text-based knowledge, but practical experience as well. So what I do is I give my students all of my slides because I don't want them to worry about taking notes during the lecture. What they can do is they can download my lectures later at any time in the future to review it, and then that way students take notes on the things that are important to them and not trying to capture everything that I've already said, and that allows them to participate in the process of learning and engage with me. So I will tell you this, my mother was a really good teacher because whenever I would do something, she would know it in a heartbeat. So I don't know if you know it, but in my classroom, I tell my students on day one that all of you have an alert system on your face. So I'm very emotionally intelligent, so I scan the room. So if you haven't noticed already, I'm very big on eye contact. I've been looking at a lot of you in here. So sometimes there's a question mark that lights up on your face, so I might look at you because I see that question mark. You might not realize that you're communicating it. So if I look at you and I say, hey, do you have a question? It's only because I'm paying attention to your body language. So don't move or do anything because I will pay attention, okay? All right, so the importance of active learning. So there's two perspectives. From the individual perspective, we can expedite learning. Questions are answered during the process, and the presenter can assess the participants' learning. Why might it be important for the presenter to be able to assess the participants' learning throughout the training exercise? Sir?
Well, it's like you just said, like you can assess whether somebody has a question or not, and based on that, you can give them more information if they need it or elaborate more.
Right. Sir?
I mean, it's their job to, get them to retain that information. So if they're not getting the participant to retain it, they're not doing the job.
Right? Because if, sir?
I think it has to do on interpretation. Like some people don't see things the same as other people do. So like you said, if you see something, those ways that they get it, explain it different ways than they do.
Right, but the other thing that's important is if I go through this entire session and I don't have any checkpoints along the way, what do I not know? I don't know if you retained anything throughout the process. So I could have delivered an entire lecture and comes to find out that you didn't learn anything, or you didn't retain anything, or you had a lot of questions. So it's good to have that feedback process. So from an organizational standpoint, it supports organizational knowledge because we want the organization to grow. How many of you have ever heard of the term information hoarder? Sir?
Where you keep all the information to yourself.
Right, and is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Why?
Because if you don't spread the information, then no one else can learn or do it.
Right, so you have all the information, other folks in the organization don't necessarily benefit. But what's the other potential issue with that? Because some folks use it as power. So information hoarding is you have a body of information or a body of knowledge, and what happens is you retain all of that information because it can give you a competitive advantage. Because knowledge is power, right? So questions that others might want to ask are asked during and answered during the session, and then it also encourages teamwork and team building, okay? So, question for you. Why might a collaborative learning environment have an impact on organizational performance and success? Sir?
Because you can learn from each other?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to add something? Sir?
You can see like a situation from different viewpoints.
Yeah. And why might that be important?
Sometimes someone else has a better approach to a situation that you're not going on because you usually think on that. So.
That's a crazy thought that an individual doesn't always have all the answers. Crazy, right? Ma'am, did you want to add something? Okay, I thought I saw your hand. All right, so the benefits of collaborative learning, it can reduce the time for retention. It can help individuals to convey difficult concepts in a shorter time frame because we're sharing the information and knowledge. Different perspectives and approaches, as was mentioned earlier, process or system issues can be identified early on. I've managed a lot of strategic programs in Fortune 500 companies. And one of the things that happens sometimes is we can go through the entire development life cycle and we get to moments before releasing the product and then someone says, well, that's not going to work, or we didn't cover that because what didn't happen? We didn't make sure that all the key stakeholders were at the table early on in the process. And sometimes someone might identify, hey, you know what? I understand what we're doing, but this might have an implication on this or that. And then someone brings that up, and then all of a sudden someone says, oh, you know what? I never thought about that. So if that has an impact on you, you know what? That impacts our group too. So it has an opportunity to have that collaborative learning and shared experiences to make sure that we deliver a better product. And then we develop a team-based culture. So another question, what affects a leader's ability to be successful? Sir?
One thing is your mentality.
Mentality. So, that's a broad term. So what do you mean by mentality?
How you want to interact with this. Are you willing to interact with individuals? Are you assertive? You come into situations scared? Are you convey your messages clearly?
Yeah, so the mindset of an individual is very, very important in organizational challenges. I won't say failure, but challenges in organizational success as well. Sir?
Their own strengths in the situation that they're put into. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses along with leaders, and a situation might call for you to be encouraging someone rather than telling them to just do something.
Great. So, ma'am, sorry.
Your team members, because you could be an okay leader, but you could have a really shitty team that have
so to speak. Yes. Yeah, I mean, sometimes if we don't have a good team or we don't have good management skills. But what's something that impacts not just individuals, leaders, or organizations, and it's an F word, but keep it clean. What's something that impacts a lot of individuals? Huh? I hear fun, I hear failure. Fear, right? So a lot of times what can affect a leader's success is fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of doing something they haven't done before, fear of worrying about what somebody else is thinking about us. And that's probably one of the biggest things that holds us back in terms of individuals or organizations, is worrying too much about what others are thinking about us. So some of the factors that affect a leader's success: attitude. That's one of the biggest ones. Compassion. Think compassion is important when you're leading a team? Being compassionate? You better believe it. Behavior. So if you're leading a team and you're telling your team that you need to do X, Y, and Z, but you're not implementing the behavior that you are telling them that you want, there's a mismatch. So the organization and the individuals within the organization can get confused. Vision. You've got to have a clear vision that you articulate. Being reasonable. Reasonableness. Sometimes leaders aren't reasonable, and there can be various reasons for that. But as leaders, we need to be able to listen to our teams, take in their feedback, and make adjustments as we go along. Organization, we want to make sure that all of our processes and systems are in a logical order. Strategy, we've got to have one, because if you don't have a good strategy, which is communicated through your vision and your mission, then your team might wander in directions that you might not want them to go. But most importantly, we want to be able to communicate. And the biggest factor is personality. Because how many of you believe that organizations have personality? Raise your hands. Yeah, organizations have personality. And where does the organization's personality come from?
Generally, like the leader.
Yeah, the senior most leader sets the tone of the organization. So, exercise number 1. So we'll use the sheets that I passed out prior to the session. Write 3 adjectives that describe the leader you want to be on your sheet. 3 adjectives that describes the leader that you want to be. So now another question for you. What is belief? What is belief? Anybody have a definition of what belief is? Don't know? I can't hear you.
Something to stand for.
Something you stand for? Anything else? Something you believe to be true. Yeah, I like that part of it, right? So belief is a feeling that X is worth doing something. It can drive action because if we believe in something that we're doing, it can help propel us forward so that we take positive steps in a direction towards what we want to achieve. It can provide energy. Have you ever started to work on something and you really didn't believe on what you were working on, and you sort of like, oh, I'm going to do this, but you sort of half-heartedly did it? But then when you believed in something that you were working on, you can be fully committed to the effort. And it can help you to achieve the things that you want, making forward progress and energy, but also the most important thing is belief helps us to take that first step towards our goal. And one of the things that I've used belief for throughout my career and throughout my educational journey is to be able to overcome numerous challenges and obstacles, because when you believe in yourself, it's a powerful tool to continue to move forward. So, exercise number 2. Write 3 barriers to your beliefs on your sheet. So, if you're having challenges thinking about, well, what might be some barriers to my beliefs? Think about the question, what might prevent you from acting on your belief? So, write those down now. If you have at least 2 down, that's good. So words that can describe barriers to belief: someone's attitude, their confidence, their support system. You know, that's a big thing that holds individuals back sometimes, is they don't have a good support system. Let me tell you, having a support system is great, but what's the best support system that you can have? Yourself, right? So make sure that you build that. Past performance can be a barrier, and we have to remember that past performance is not always indicative of future success. So, sharing a personal story, in 10th grade, I failed 6 out of 7 classes, and I was told to leave school because I would never make it. Imagine if I had listened to them. I ended up graduating my high school class in the bottom 8%. Went to 2 colleges and left them. At one college that I went to, I had a 0.00 average, 2 semesters. But I never gave up because I had a belief in myself, but I also had a desire and drive to be better. Fast forward, as I told you earlier, I have an undergraduate degree and 2 master's degrees. I've written 13 publications, and I have 2 companies that I'm building right now. So don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something. Because if you want to do it, I always like to say, folks will fulfill the things that they want to when they're ready to tee off. That is, they use their time, energy, and effort on fulfilling fantasies, or otherwise, fantasy is another way of saying it, dreams. Resilience being able to bounce back, not worrying about negative feedback. How many of you have ever received negative feedback and it set you back for a minute? Come on. I mean, we've all have done it. Our parents have done it to us. Our friends have done it to us. Folks read my articles on Huffington Post and give me their opinions, you know? But you can't worry about that. What I always do is I do the right thing for me, and as long as my actions are positive, I continue to move forward. And we've got to develop thick skin. Being able to say, you know what, I understand your perspectives, I will take it in and consider it, but I'm not going to let it deter me in terms of meeting my goals, because what will happen sometimes, others will provide their limitations towards you instead of supporting you to achieve yours. So a quick example. Last year, I wrote a book, and I was going to release the book, and one of my really, really good friends, one of my best friends, read my book, and she's read my other books too and gave me feedback, but on this one she said, don't release this book. This is too personal. You should not release this information. And I took it in, but I released the book anyway. And by releasing that book, it led to where I am now. So had I listened to her and her limitations, then I wouldn't have been able to achieve that next plateau, because I believed in my capabilities. And the biggest factor is self-doubt. So if you can remove that out of your life, that's a critical factor in success. So, what are the components of belief? Sir?
Confidence.
Confidence? Well, I'm in the C category, but confidence isn't on my list, but it's still a good one. So, any other thoughts on the components of belief? So, a concept, consideration, and convenience. So a concept, is this considered to be true? Consideration, is this true for me? Convenience, is this true for me at this moment? So let's look at it via an example. So we look at a concept, it's something that's applied and generally accepted to be true. So we might agree in here that unethical behavior is bad and it should be resolved immediately, right? Hopefully we all agree on that. Consideration, something that is a possibility that may or may not be true. So maybe we observed, may or may not be a willingness to act. So maybe we observe someone being unethical, and then we make a decision whether or not we're going to get involved or not. Have you ever been in a situation where you saw someone doing something that was wrong, and you had to make a decision whether you wanted to get involved or not? And there could be a lot of factors for that. Or convenience, something that's done only if it meets an objective, personal or otherwise. So let's say that you saw someone doing something unethical, but they were in the way of you getting that raise, promotion, or that nice corner office. Might that influence your actions and your ability to act? Yeah. Another way that we look at this is sometimes from a concept we may say that we should never drink and drive. You should never ever drink and drive, but you shouldn't. A consideration could be, you know what? I only had 2 drinks. You know what? It really wasn't, the drinks weren't that strong. I think that I can go out here, and drive. So, or maybe I think I should take a cab. So there's a consideration there. But when we look at convenience, let's say that you're in the middle of nowhere. You've had 4 drinks. There isn't a way for you to get home. Now you're making a choice. Do I stay where I am and wait it out, or do I get home because I've got something important to do? So now it's convenient for me to drive, even though earlier, from a concept, I said I would never do it, and from a consideration, hopefully I said I wouldn't do it either. So sometimes our environmental situations or things that we're going through at a moment can affect what we believe. So beliefs impact. So the lack of belief can have our impact on our willingness to take a chance, okay? It can also impact our ability to achieve our goals and objectives. Because if we don't believe in what we're doing, we're not going to work hard enough towards necessarily achieving them. It also impacts our ability to deliver our best performance. So whenever I'm doing whatever I'm doing, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to believe that I can do it. So one of the beliefs that I have, and you might laugh, is I believe that I'm a superstar. Do you believe that? How many of you tell yourself that you're a superstar? Hopefully you don't tell yourself anything less than that. So if I believe that I'm a superstar, I'm going to more likely live up to my potential versus saying, you know what, this is horrible, I'm never going to make this, I'm never going to do that. What is that going to do for me? I am a superstar and I own it, okay? Opportunity to deliver best performance. How about the ability to convince others in something that you believe in? Does it make a difference if you fully believe something, whether you can convince others? What I always like to tell my students is, even if you don't know something, so if you're having a conversation, one of the things that I always hate to hear is, this is what I think that's probably right. No, this is what I think. And if you say it with conviction, what happens sometimes? What happens if you say it with conviction?
People believe it.
People believe it, but also people will follow you. Just because you were convincing and there was conviction. And then the capability to deliver performance excellence, which we always want to do. And there's a difference between perfection and performance excellence. Perfection is not achievable. Performance excellence is achievable because it means that we've done our best at that moment in time. So if you have to show up to work and you didn't get a good night's sleep, are you going to necessarily deliver performance excellence? No. But if you got a good night's sleep, you're properly hydrated, you got a good meal, you're going to have a better opportunity to deliver performance excellence. And if your best on that day is not your best, but it's the best that you can deliver at that moment, then good for you. Because there's sometimes that I've gone out and delivered a speech or something, and it just wasn't the best that I could do, but it was the best that I could do on that day, and I was happy with that. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. What is a self-talk? Anybody? Sir?
Is that when you pump yourself up?
Sort of. More specifically? Sir?
It's kind of like when you reflect on what you've done.
Not exactly. Sir?
Motivating yourself.
Motivating yourself in what way?
And what, just giving yourself the confidence that you need. Some people are going to doubt you, and it's important that you believe in yourself, and then self-talking is a key part of that.
Yeah. So a lot of times folks will say, "Don't talk to yourself. It's crazy." Right? You've heard that. I always like to say, "Just don't answer back." But I talk to myself all the time. How many of you in here talk to yourself? Come on. Yeah. How many of you talk to yourself in front of a mirror? Oh, I look good tonight before this party, right? Is that what you're saying? No, but early in my career, I used to be really shy, by the way. And so early in my corporate career, I knew that I needed to give presentations and I needed to speak up in meetings. So what I would do is I wrote a self-talk, and my self-talk was this. And well, actually, before I tell you what it is, so here's my mirror. 3 times a day, I would stand up, look myself in the mirror in the bathroom, look myself in the eye, and I would repeat the following 10 times. I'm not going to do it right now, but 10 times. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. And that's the conversation that I would have with myself every day. So the reason that it's important is what you said earlier, it helps to build confidence. So self-talk is an individual's conversation that they have with themselves to change their thoughts or future behaviors. And this could be a change in attitude or a previous belief. So self-talks are important. We just said a change of attitude, develop beliefs by defining the things that are important. Because you're saying to yourself, this is what's important. Transforming your thoughts into beliefs via repetition. I typically don't believe in repetition as a process for learning. Everybody learns differently. But in terms of my self-talk, I do believe in it. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. It helps to build confidence, and then it also communicates our desired future behavior. So, now let's go back to your sheet. Insert the adjectives recorded earlier to complete these sentences. I am a leader who is, so we're just going to take our adjectives and then insert it into the sentence. I am a leader who is. I am a leader who is. The sexy one of yours? Oh, delayed laughter. Ah! I'm bringing sexy back. All right. Words used to describe a leader. Compassionate, strategic, driven, visionary, sociable, thoughtful, flexible, connected, inspirational, and informed. And there's others that are out there. Why might sociable be a good thing as a leader? Or is it a good thing? Yes?
You need to be able to communicate.
Yeah. Be able to communicate effectively, but more importantly, sir?
You have to be approachable.
Approachable, which makes you human, right? And relatable. Because when folks feel like they can come and talk to you, here's one of the biggest things that I've learned about being sociable. And I've managed a lot of programs in a lot of companies. And let me tell you something. And if any of you have managed a big project or program or will in the future, you have not done it alone. Somebody on that team, a lot of people have helped you to deliver what you need to deliver. And as the leader of a team, of an organization, of a program, I rely on my people to provide the information. So if I am a jerk, how likely is it that folks are going to come and tell me about potential issues? Less likely. And sometimes folks will withhold information just so that because I'm being a jerk. Let me tell you, in a lot of organizations that I've worked, my butt's been saved on a project because someone has come and told me something that's happened in a meeting, or told me something that I needed to know that they didn't have to. So building those relationships are important. All right, so of course I'm a professor, you gotta have homework. So homework number 1, you're gonna repeat each of your self-talks at least 3 times once a day. That's simple enough. All right, so the outcome, so if you do this, your thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors will be reprogrammed each time your self-talk is used. And this is why it's important. Every time you process your self-talk, and you're going to say it out loud, like I did earlier, you're thinking it, you're speaking it, you're hearing it, and you're processing it. And each time you speak your self-talk, it's being processed 4 times. So imagine how many times that happens. And so the self-talks, yes, sir?
Should we lie to ourselves when we do self-talk?
No, you shouldn't lie to yourself, but you should project what you want in the future. We don't want to lie to ourselves. Well, you're not today. Right. You're saying what your future behavior or attitude should be. Right? So, one of the things that self-talks can help us do, how many of you were a kid at some point? Yeah, we all were. So, your parents were carrying you around, and when you were first born, you couldn't get around on your own, so what they would do is they would carry you and put you here. They'd pick you up and carry you and put you there. And they'd pick you up and carry you and put you there. And then everybody's excited for you to do what? To walk. Or at least crawl, right? So then you start crawling. And what happens? When the baby starts crawling, what happens next? What do parents start doing once the child starts being curious and exploring his or her new world?
Hiding things.
Hiding things, but what else do you hear? What do you hear?
Good job.
Oh, good job. Yeah, hopefully we hear more of that. But what do you normally hear? Oh, there's that electrical outlet.
They're worried.
Huh?
They're worried.
They're worried, and what do they say? I'm heading towards that electrical outlet.
Baby tripping.
Yeah, but what do the parents say?
No.
Stop! No! Don't! Quit! Can't! How many times do we hear that over our lives? Think! How many times do you hear that over your lives? So from a negative conditioning standpoint, we're pretty good at getting that from our friends, from our families, from our environment. So what we want to do is add positive influences to our environment. So let's look at our organizational self-talk. So organizations have self-talks too. Did you know that? So organizations have self-talks that are communicated through the vision and the mission. And they're achieved through the goals and the objectives. So leaders must reinforce this by communicating a strategic purpose and direction. So, your action plan, part 1. Use the 3 barriers to your beliefs to complete these sentences. Number 1 barrier to my belief is. Number 2 barrier to my belief is. And number 3 barrier to my belief is. Okay. Now we're going to go on to action plan part 2. Identify an action that will be taken to remove each barrier to your beliefs. I will do to overcome barrier number 1. I will do to overcome barrier number 2. And I will do to overcome barrier number 3. All right, now we're going to have a group exercise. I want you to share your plan to overcome any of your barriers with someone right now. Share yours with someone too.
Hey, James. Nice to meet you.
I hear myself self-talking.
The biggest things that I've learned is that after you doing things, definitely doubt. Sometimes I just think things are impossible. Fear. It's not sometimes fear that I'm not going to be able to
All right, let's take another 30 seconds to start wrapping up.
That's just things, yeah. Things you got to get over as teamwork.
All right, so now let's move on now. So now you've committed. You've now communicated your plan to overcome a barrier to someone. So will you go back on your plan? Hopefully not. All right, so now what we're going to do, and I want you to do this to 2 people in the room. I want you to demonstrate your support. So what I want you to turn and say to 2 people in this room is, I believe in you, I support you, I wish the best for you, and good luck to you. Good luck to you. All right? Do that now to at least 2 people in the room. I believe in you, I support you, I wish the best for you, good luck.
I believe in you. I wish the best for you.
All right. So in this session, we're talking about encouraging the heart. So leaders encourage the heart in group development by communicating a clear vision. So before you get started, you need to be able to communicate your vision. So prior to starting the session, I laid out my vision for what we were going to cover during this session. We set high expectations for individuals and their organizations. It is my job as a leader to set performance standards that are high. Because if I set performance standards for my organization that are low, what do folks do? Sometimes only achieve to that level. But if I tell you that my performance standards are high, then over time, I'm going to help you, and as an organization, we're going to collectively work together to reach that level. But we also build a team-based environment that's very supportive. We focus on performance excellence and not perfection, as we discussed earlier. And then we encourage growth through collaboration. Collaboration is a very critical tool for growth. For individual growth, organizational growth, and societal growth. And by doing this, we make the process fun. You're not in it alone. You're in it with others. So question. Has anyone experienced encouraging the heart in their organization? Have you been in an organization where someone was encouraging the heart, encouraging you to participate, encouraging you to do better? Have you? Well, if you're not, you need to find an organization that's going to support you in that way, because it's important. So encouraging the heart. So we're going to give an example from my college classroom. So on day one, when my students walk in, I tell them that each of you walk through that door as an individual. We are now a learning organization, and we're going to learn and grow from each other throughout the semester. What I'm going to provide you are my definitions of the facts. And over the course of the semester, you're going to develop your definitions of the facts. And by the end of the semester, you're going to have your viewpoints on the facts, which may or may not be aligned with mine. And that's okay. The other thing that I tell my students is that there is no such thing as a perfect answer. Because if I ask you, how was the world created? And you tell me that it was created in one day and this happened, that's fine. But support your answer. Because my job is to help you to think critically. But I also don't give word count, page counts. Because what happens when you give word count and page counts?
Restrictions.
Well, restrictions, but folks will write to that level. So what I tell my students is, if it takes you 100 words to tell me how the world was created, good for you. If it takes you 1,000 words to tell me how the world was created, good for you. Just make sure you support your answer. The other thing that I do is I solicit feedback throughout the course of the semester. So what happens typically in a lot of classrooms? When are you asked to provide your input? At the end of the semester. What does that do for you?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So I, as a teacher, can't course correct over the course of the semester to make the learning experience better for you. Because aren't you paying for the college experience? So shouldn't you get what you pay for? So if your professor is not giving you what you paid for, then you need to tell them to teach differently, or try to make some adjustments to meet your needs, or work with you differently. And it's your right and your obligation to do so because you're paying for it. You're not only paying for it in your tuition, but you're paying for it in your investment of time, so get what you pay for. Encourage students to ask questions and respectfully challenge my opinions. I will provide you with my viewpoint. You do not need to agree. You can tell me that you don't agree with me, that I'm a bunch of, well, hold on, maybe not that far. But what you can do is, you can say, I don't agree with you, and this is the reason why. And then we can deliberate about the reasons that you don't agree with my position. And we do not have to agree in the end. Inspire students to be vulnerable. I tell my students, it's okay to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is one of those things that we learn over time, and we say, oh my God, I can't share with anybody that this is going on with me. But that's one of the biggest fallacies. Because that's where we get into trouble. As an individual or as an organization, we don't tell folks what are going on, and then we flounder over here alone. That's where our teams come together. They encourage us to work together. We lift each other up, and then we become better because of it, not in spite of it. Structuring testing checkpoints, primarily as group activities. I have moved away primarily from written exams that are stressful, that require students to regurgitate. Why might I move away from that approach, not requiring my students to regurgitate information to me, or put them in a high stress situation related to taking a paper-based exam? Why might I move away from that? Sir?
You don't retain it?
A lot of times you don't. What do? You cram, you go in there, you regurgitate it, and then I get them in the next semester. What did you learn in Business 100 when they were in my Business 201 class? I don't remember. Okay, let's start again so that we can teach you. But the other thing is, what I do is, I move towards assessments where individuals are up in front of the classroom exchanging information, and group assessments that we work together, because what do we do in the business environment? If you have an issue that you're working on, well, first and foremost, let's step back. How many times do any of you work like in a corporate environment, or even in any other jobs? How many of the times have someone said, ladies and gentlemen, at 12 o'clock on Thursday, please meet in this room here and we're going to have an exam. Bring your number 2 pencil and your scan sheet. How often does that happen? But what happens is we say, oh my gosh, we've got a problem. We need to figure it out. So let's get someone from this team, that team, that team, that team, that team, that team, and we're going to get together. Or if you don't know the answer, go look it up. We don't say, go take a test. So if we want organizations to work together, then we should start teaching students to work together in the classroom so that corporations ultimately get what we want. So, and then encourage regular celebrations of individual and organizational success. It is okay to celebrate and have fun in the classroom. It's a shared experience. Learn from it, right? So collaborative learning positively impacts teams because it gives us a greater potential to expedite organizational learning. It helps to develop team camaraderie. One of the things that a lot of my students say at the end of the semester is that the thing that was unique about your class, the one thing I didn't mention, in my class I learned everybody's name starting on the first day. Do you think that makes a difference? So I might not know your name on the second week, but by the third week I know your name. So when you say, I have a question, I don't say, excuse me, sir. I say, John, you have a question? And what that allows me to do, because John, nobody else in here exists right now, do they, John? It's just me and you. Do you feel my energy directed towards you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Does that make a difference? When somebody looks you in the eye and respects you and says, what you're saying to me right now is important? Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It makes a personal connection. And those things are important. We're going to minimize that us versus them mentality, because sometimes we have that in organizations where it's like, our team is doing this and your team is doing that. We need to get away from that us versus them mentality. We focus on team's growth, not individual growth, because if we focus on individual growth and working together, the team will grow, the organization will grow, and everybody will do better. And then we don't worry about mistakes because there's no longer that fear of failure. And then we eliminate unnecessary stress because support is readily available because we're all working together and we've built that culture. So recognition is important. So recognition is important because we celebrate performance. It helps to relieve stress. It feeds our emotional needs because we're emotional individuals. It drives our future performance if it's matched to individual interests. And a lot of times, this is a little bit of a misnomer. Folks will say, I am a motivational speaker. And I have a problem with that because I am not a motivational speaker. I'm an inspirational speaker because I cannot motivate you to do anything. The only thing that I can do is inspire you to be better. And we make someone feel valued. But we have to understand that personalized recognition as much as possible because it's important. So, now we're getting towards the end. So, thank you for your time. But let's celebrate our completion. What should we do? Self-talk? Ready? Set? Hold on. Ready? Set? Applause! 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 Yeah! That's all, folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone.